and welcome to NICA's Digital Open Day, new experience for everybody. My name's David Munro. I'm the NICA Head Physio, and I'm part of the NICA Healthcare team, which are tasked with looking after the NICA students whilst they're in the course. It's comprised of myself, another physiotherapist who also acts as our strength and conditioning. We have a fantastic sports doctor, Dr. Kathy Yu, who's also the Gymnastics Australia head doctor, and we have a sports psychologist, Jess Pearson, who works with the students, and we also occasionally have a sports nutritionist who comes in and talks to the students about dietary needs. So what I wanted to talk about today was just a little bit about what you might expect at the audition process from a physio screening point of view and why we do those. The main thing at this stage of your audition process, it's really about safety. We want to ensure that you're safe to audition, not only for yourselves, but also for others. So as you are well aware, circus is a demanding physical task, and it's not without its risks. And we want to minimise those risks, not only for yourself, but for other people. So if you're a base or a catcher, we want to make sure that you're able to base and able to catch safely. And if you're a flyer, we want to be able to ensure that you're going to be caught safely along the way as well, for example. So that's partly what we're looking at in the audition process. So often we will be hanging around just watching and seeing how students move, having a look at different aspects of their movement patterns to build a whole picture. It's not just one or two tests, it's really a number of pieces to the puzzle that go into what makes a safe and effective circus student. And as you all realise, circus is it's a very broad church, as they say. So all sorts of body types are very complementary to circus. So we need big, strong bases. We need smaller, strong flyers, fantastic manipulators, bendy contortionists, all those different types of people, and they all have different body types. So there's not one body type before. Like we're looking for a range of body types to slot people into specialities and different positions whilst they're at NICA. But underlying, we need to make sure that they're safe and physically able to do. So during your audition process, the circus staff will be running you through their tasks, and we'll be watching, as I said before. And then we will also have our own stations where we'll be running some of our own sort of physical tests. We'd like to look at a couple of very broad things to start with at this point. Having been at NICA for quite a while now, and NICA entering its 20th year next year, which is fantastic, we're starting to get a reasonable understanding of the pattern of injuries that we tend to see at NICA. So we do look a little bit closely at shoulder joints, particularly from a stability point of view. They are unstable by nature, so we'd like to check out to see what their stability is like. Hips are another joint that we'll also look at, particularly bendy person. Hips can sometimes get themselves to all sorts of little impinged positions. Is something we'll always be looking at, no matter what you do at NICA, from the most bendy act all the way through to a clowning role. Core stability becomes crucial to what you're doing, so it's something that we're looking at from there. So there's nothing major that we're taking through at this stage. Pre-entry to the course, we're really just looking at a very broad picture to see what your body's like, making sure you're safe to audition, and basically trying to get an understanding of whether your body would be able to withstand the rigours of training at NICA at the next 3 years. As you all appreciate, NICA is an elite training institution. It's very demanding physically, it's demanding mentally and emotionally, artistically as well, but physically from our perspective, very demanding. So we want to ensure that when you come into the course that you have a very, very good chance of withstanding that physical training load. We don't want people coming in to get injuries along the way and either spend lots of time to train or not being able to complete the course. That's not good for us. It's not good for NICA, it's not good for anyone. So we really want to get a good picture of the students' health, physical health, before they come in. You don't have to be perfect. Students coming in at the start of the bachelor's course are, they're all a work in progress. So we're looking for just that baseline level that you will be able to take the training on board grow, improve, strengthen, stretch, get more flexible, all those sorts of things that will happen over that course, but you need to have that base level of fitness before you come in. Once you are successful into the course, in the first couple of weeks of the first year, we do a brand new screening again. And this time we're looking at slightly different things. It's very individualised. We start really digging into the individual students' bodies a little more, sometimes figuratively, sometimes just having a look at them, and trying to work out how their body type is going to match where they're thinking about heading. Especially at year, we don't expect students to have some do, but not all students have a crystal clear picture of where they might be going. Some have a rough idea. They might want to do something in the air. They might want to head down a juggling pathway. They might want to do some contortion work. So maybe some rough ideas, but a lot of students don't, and that's completely fine as well. But what we do in that first year of, the first week, is start looking at individual bodies, strengths and weaknesses, and where that student's looking to head and what they're looking to do. So we become a lot more specific with our testing. And the aim of that phase is to really build an individual strength and conditioning program for each individual student, and they are generally very specific. Often there's shared exercises. You're doing a shared strength and conditioning class, for example, and doing group exercises. And there are several exercises that are common across the student group. But then you will also have your own set of exercises, and that will depend on what we find in that screening. So it might be, for example, someone who's extremely hypermobile in their shoulders, and we know that the handstand component is important as part of the assessment and learning criteria at NICA. Handstands and super hypermobile shoulders don't always go together super well, so we might put that particular student on a specific shoulder strengthening exercise. We might have another student who's coming from a strong handstand background, maybe coming up through the boys' gym program with really good shoulders, for example. They might need to work on hip flexibility, for example, in that instance. So then you'll have your own dedicated specific strength of set of exercises to continue on whilst you're at night. And they're always work in progress. They're not set and forget. Once you start your exercise program, we're constantly monitoring that as you go through. Getting back to the sort of audition phase of where you guys are at the moment, the tips, I suppose, that we're looking to give suggestions is getting your body right. We will look at what we need to look at, and we might even have a chat to some of you if you've got significant past injuries. It's certainly not a showstopper in terms of getting into the course. We've taken students in who have had previous shoulder surgeries, knee reconstructions, and so on, and fractures. That's not an issue. In fact, most of the students who end up getting into NICA have probably banged up their bodies somewhere along the way, and it's not a bad thing to see someone who's pushed them to maybe fall over the edge occasionally and picked up a little injury or two. That's not a bad thing. It's just something we like to do as part of that. So we might ask you about some of your past injuries, but generally they're just an indicator of what we need to look at as well. The things to work on when you're starting your training at the moment, and it's such an unusual year for training, and people don't have access to, well, certainly in Metro Melbourne anyway, recent access to gyms and internal training spaces. So getting Relive aerial rigs, it's been really difficult. So a lot of the stuff you've probably been training at has been home-based and possible-based. But we're not really looking at that too much. We're looking at controlled movements and how you move as a functional movement pattern overall. So the tips I'd have is keep working around control exercises. Core stability is crucial. There's lots of great information online. I know, for example, Cirque du Soleil have a 7 or 8 minute abs program that a lot of our students have been following, and it's a circus-specific core program, and we'll be running our testing around there. The tip that we would give you guys at the moment from where you are is when you start your training, the old saying of start low and go slow is really important. We know that one of the key indicators or one of the key points of students pick up an injury is when they really increase training load, either in terms of volume or intensity or frequency. So big steps in your training that's a spot where you can pick up some injuries. So plan your training. Think about the day of the audition, what you need to do, and where your body is at the moment, what it can do at this moment, and where you want it to be by the audition date comes around. It might be handstand holds or push example. We look at push-ups just as a broad measure of some things. Chin-ups is a really good one. So you can practice some chin-ups somewhere. I think Metro Melbourne, the parks are open again. You can probably find some monkey bars somewhere. If you can only do 1 or 2 chin-ups, don't expect to be doing 5, 6 or 7 by the end of next week. Plan out your training and slowly increase and slowly grade through your training regime of what you do and where you want to go. Slow and steady jumps. The way to go, a big jump in either intensity or load. That's when we're seeing injuries pop up, and you don't want to be coming in the audition with one of these little niggles that might be sitting there. If you do have a current injury, don't panic. That's okay. We'll take that into consideration when you audition. We've had students turn up with their arms in a sling before or the moon boot on, and that's okay. We'll work around that. We'll obviously ask you about the injury, but that's not a permanent injury that we need to worry about most of the time. It's just a temporary thing, and we can often work around that and work out another way. We can assess you into that part. The other thing that I wanted to have a quick chat to you about is also introducing new exercises. You've probably got a run-through sheet of what you're expected to do on the audition day, but if something's new there, it's all about technique, and that's the safest way to do it and the most effective way to do it when you're going through. So think about how you're doing that exercise and the most efficient way to do it. If you can do some video feedback of what you're doing, for example, get one of your friends to video what you're doing in a handstand, for example. Sometimes it's really difficult when you jump up to a handstand to see what your alignment's like, your wrist position, where your shoulders are, all that sort of stuff with you straight. Getting someone to videotape it for you is possibly a really effective way to do it. But slowly start increasing what you're doing. Having a look at what criteria are. Think about your areas of strength and weakness. And the areas to work on are actually the areas of weakness for you at the moment. The areas that you're just not so good at, or you need to improve a little bit more, because that's probably where you're going to make your best gains. Take it slow, take it nice and steady. You can think about having alternate days with your training as well. Often our students have 2 separate training programs, and they alternate one program on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example. And they might do another program on the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and have a rest day on a Sunday. And a rest day is important as well, just to give your body a chance to recover. Listen to your body's pains. If there's something new that develops, try and work backwards on what's happened from there. So if you're developing some elbow pain, for example, and you've increased your chin-up routines, then that's possibly a good thing to look at. Maybe think about dropping down the frequency or the intensity of that for the moment. If you're doing handstands, you're starting to get some wrist pain. Be careful about how you're putting your into those positions. Going flat on the floor with your wrist back in this position can often load up at the back. You can doing stand. We often recommend a mini P-bar. Some of you might be familiar with them, but what you can do is just get, if you've got some set of dumbbells somewhere, and actually do the handstand with your hands a bit straighter through the wrist, and that decreases the load through there, and that will build up some tolerance coming through for your wrist. And wrists in particular are an area that we do get a little bit of issues with it, like in particular with students who haven't done a lot of handstands in the past. So if you're a person who's not done a lot of handstands, and the groups we tend to see coming through tend to be sort of the dancers, calisthenics, rhythmic gymnastics backgrounds, tend to have not done a lot of weight-bearing stuff through their upper body and their arms in particular. So there are always areas to look at from there. So think about your needs, the areas you need to work on, plan out your training, write it down, have a plan. There's lots of fantastic information online now, and even from doing some cardio stuff with some running. If you haven't done much running before, cardio is important, because the fitter you are, the the easier you'll be able to do that exercise, and you won't fatigue. And once you fatigue, that's when mistakes start to little slips that can happen from there. Okay, there's one at the bottom here. What are some of the most serious injuries you've seen at NICA? As I said, NICA's been going 20, or will be 20 years next year, and I've been there for most of that time. Luckily, or maybe not luckily, I think through good management, we've had very few really serious injuries. When we first started, we did have a knee injury, an ACL rupture, which is a bit of a nasty injury early on, but really since then we've probably only had 5 or 6 in that journey. The reason they're serious is that almost inevitably they need to be surgically reconstructed. But over the journey, they've been very far and few between. We've had the occasional fractured arm, the occasional fractured ankle, broken ankle, just from missing a step or a block. Most of the time they happen just with the students. The worst fractured ankle we've seen was a student stepping off a large mat that was at the bottom of the Chinese pole and forgetting that the mat was there, and stepped down 25 or 30 centimetres and fractured their ankle that way. And we did have one slight mishap a couple of years ago. Someone fell over an aerial ring and sustained a bit of an injury, but by and large, the injuries have been relatively minor. They're not serious. We certainly have not had a spinal injury in the time that NICA's been going, and that's something I think is a credit to the way that NICA take their health and safety so seriously, and all the rigging and everything that's done properly in the way that it's taught, that we've been it's been very well managed in that regard. Do many injured students pull out or continue with NICA post-injury? So most of the students will continue their injury. As I said, we've had very few serious injuries to the point where the students have had to pull out. We've had a couple along the way. The ones that may withdraw would often take like a year's leave. So if someone's badly dislocated their shoulder and they're doing a handstand act, for example, or something where they really need that shoulder stability and that shoulder needs to be reconstructed, we know that that's a 9-month recovery post-surgery. And that's the same with a knee reconstruction as well. And there have been a few of those across the journey. I don't have the stats absolutely in front of me at the moment, but certainly in the single figures for both of those. So most of the students will continue on post-injury. If, for example, we've got a student that has had ankle, we might pop them, don't need surgery, pop them into a moon boot for 6 weeks, so they're in one of those really fixed walkers. They can still train, so they just can't do anything on their feet. So a whole bunch of hip work, we can do some core stability stuff, we can do handstands, we can modify their training to keep them involved in the course. They can work on their choreography, their lighting, whatever they need to do for their act as well. So the vast majority of the students would manage through at NICA with their injury rather than taking time out completely. The ones that do take time out completely are the ones that have generally had a surgical procedure. Next question. I already have a physiotherapist. Can I keep seeing them while I'm at NICA? Absolutely. We're very happy for you to keep doing that. A lot of people like, if they've had someone that they've worked with and they understand their body, absolutely very happy for you to continue doing that. If you'd like to have us involved in your physio care, we're happy to touch base with them. If you want to keep it separate, that's fine as well. Given that the students are in the course, at the very least, we probably know just broadly what's going on, so we can help direct training and what's safe for you and progressions. So often if a student's got their own physio, we might just swap a couple of emails or a quick phone call every now and again to find out what they're up to in terms of how progressing through. But I'm happy for you to continue on and see your own physio or whoever you like seeing, anyone else for that matter, whilst you're at NICA. How can I best look after my body when recommending training post-lockdown? Yes, well, this has really been the big question. Getting back after post-lockdown is a big issue, and it's been really hard, not only for NICA students, but for anyone who, from a recreational athlete through to some of the higher end athletes. what happens during the break in training is your body does decondition a little bit, and it will depend very individually on what level you've started at, how long you've been training previous to that, your age, your previous injuries. All those sort of factors come into it. So there's not one set answer, but basically we all need to accept that after having quite a length of time off training, and anything more than 6 weeks starts to have a significant increase, that it does decondition your body quite a bit. The Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS, have released what they call a white paper, which is a study on exactly this, and they have put together a little formula to help guide us in making those decisions. And we look at things like how many hours you were training per week pre-lockdown, how many hours you were training during lockdown, how long lockdown went for, and basically what the intensity was of that training whilst you're in lockdown. And all those factors go into a calculator. You press a button and we get a little bit of an idea of where we're going and the number it takes to. But as a very, very, very comment, what I would say is for the length of time that you are out of your usual training period, it will possibly take you at least that length of time to get back into pre-lockdown stage. So if you are unable to train at your usual for 6 weeks, it possibly may take 6 weeks. Again, this is important. Again, a graduated loading training all the way through during that period to get you back up again. The being, if you come back in after and you're really excited and you can get back into training and you hit it too hard, your body just won't be able to adapt to that load, even though it will get back there, and even though it previously could adapt to that load during the lockdown, it has inevitably, sadly, deconditioned a little bit. So just be mindful of that. I'm currently recovering from a non-serious injury. Should I still audition to commence at NICA next year? I think the question there is probably yes, if you really want to. Depends on what the non-serious injury is and depends on where you are along the pathway of your recovery. So if it's a non-serious injury, is that a 6 to 8 weeks, sort of if you're sitting at halfway mark, we will definitely take that into account, because we know that that non-serious injury should have been resolved completely by the time you'll be looking to start in January, February of next year. So we can work around that. We understand that students will come in with injuries. As I said before, we've had students turn up in slings and moon boots before, and we will obviously assess it, take it into consideration, but around it's not a showstopper to come in. And if you're really to audition next year, that integration when we do our screenings and assessment. Question: can you tell me more about the NICA medical team and its specialists? Yes, it's okay. So, I'll start perhaps. So I've been at NICA since basically it opened in 2001. So, and I did a Churchill Fellowship in Circus Arts in 2004. It's going back a little while now, and spent some time with Cirque du Soleil and a couple of circus schools in China. And I suppose we're still learning. We certainly don't know everything about circus, but we're certainly developing our knowledge. We've linked up with the new Swinburne University Physiotherapy School, and we've got a couple of research projects going. There's one running about shoulder injuries at the moment. We've got one in the pipeline for hip injuries next year. We had a couple for this year, but of course, with everything going on, we just couldn't get it off the ground because we couldn't get access to the students. The other physios involved have got specialised training in performing arts, dance and gymnastics in particular. So they're very focused on that. Dr. Kathy Yu is the sports doctor. She's been at NICA since roughly 2004, 5-ish, I think, as well. And she specialises in performing arts and gymnastics. I mentioned before, she's the head doctor for the Australian Gymnastics Program. Was due to go to Tokyo this year to head up the Gymnastics Australia medical team, but of course that'll happen next year. But she's really good with bendy young adults who like to throw themselves around in the air or bounce up and down or catch things, all that sort of stuff. So she understands that work. We've also got a very got a terrific group of specialist surgeons now that understand circus. And one of the best things we've done in the past is get surgeons along to the showcase and a lot of the shows so they can see the demands that our students put on their bodies. And they get it now. They understand that students have unbelievable ranges of movement and strength in their bodies and can put hips in positions that most surgeons wouldn't consider to be within the normal range, but that's what they do, and that's doing. And the rare occasions that we need to send a student to a surgeon, we can at least recommend you in the right position. Our sports psychologist, Jess, specialises in young adults in particular. She's done some work in performing arts. She's new to NICA this year. We previously had another sports psych who now works with one of the AFLW teams. But Jess is extremely good with young adults in performing arts, more dance background, but she's learning a little bit about circus. And our sports nutritionist just comes in as a consulting role. She works with one of the elite clinics, working with the young elite athletes. She gets circus as well. And that's the main thing is the medical team understand that circus is unique. It's not like any other discipline. It's a bit of athletics and it's a little bit of art. And sometimes that's 50-50, sometimes it's an 80-20 mix, and sometimes it's a 20-80 mix. And that's the great thing about circus is it's so broad. So we're learning, certainly don't know everything, but we're certainly got a pretty good understanding of the needs and the demands that most students place on their bodies. Okay, thank you.